Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Pro Football Chase YouTube channel. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my content each and every week. And for this week, I have Stardom Situm for week number 6. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get right into it because Thursday Night Football is right around the corner. So I want to make sure you're set with your fantasy lineup. So let's start with the quarterback position, shall we? So the first stardom that I have right now is Carson Wentz of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I get it. I understand your concerns. It's a little hard to play anybody from the Philadelphia Eagles at this point just because they've been so stagnant. They have not been as crisp as usual, and I think that's something that we can all admit as, you know, if you watched the Eagles play up to this point in the season. But it is a divisional opponent in the New York Giants. They'll be on the road. I think there's a high sense of urgency, really, for both teams. But I expect Carson Wentz to come out to have a good game, especially through the air. And remember this, as long as he has Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz on the field, who are two big red zone threats, I think he's worth a start. I understand if you have a quarterback that maybe has a better matchup, but I think Wentz is in for a nice outing on Thursday night. Next quarterback, how about Andy Dalton against the Pittsburgh Steelers? We all know how this Steelers secondary has been performing. They've been very underwhelming to this point. You know, there's been a mix-up. They had Cody Sensabaugh enter the lineup, and Joe Hayden obviously is the strong part of that secondary. But Cincinnati and Andy Dalton, they should have their way on Sunday. They will be playing at home. Andy Dalton has A.J. Green. He has Joe Mixon back at full strength. And he's got Tyler Boyd, who continues to emerge into a viable receiving target. Now, how about Baker Mayfield? This is a sleeper, I guess you can say. I really think that the rookie gunslinger has a good chance to perform well on Sunday. Look, I understand there's concerns. He's a rookie quarterback. The LA Chargers, they've been pretty stout as a defensive unit. They have Derwin James, the rookie, who's made some sensational plays already. He has 3 sacks on the season. But Mayfield, he threw for 340-plus yards against the Ravens' #2 total defense. I think that speaks volumes to the type of quarterback that he is. And I understand Higgins is going to be out with that MCL sprain, but you still got Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Antonio Callaway, who's a big play threat. Something in me just thinks he's going to have another big outing. And if you want to benefit from that, go ahead and start him in your lineup this week. Now, a couple sleepers here. Jameis Winston at Atlanta. I know he's taking a lot of slack about him taking over the starting job. People, let's not forget that, yes, Winston does make some bad throws just like every other quarterback, but he can sling it down the field with the best of them. And having the weapons that Tampa has, going up against an injury-depleted Atlanta secondary, he may be somebody you want to put in there if you're looking for just a big spark for your lineup. And another one, Sam Darnold against Indianapolis. 3-touchdown performance, looking good, progressing well with Jeremy Bates. Now, on we go to the running back position. Here's a couple of players that I'm starting. First one being Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. I know Mike Davis has emerged a little bit there as a viable RB2, but Carson, he is the leader of that backfield. The Seahawks offensive line has been playing very well. DJ Fluker plugged in there at right guard has been able to be getting some push on some defensive lines. They're going up against Oakland. The Raiders, we know their defense has struggled the last couple weeks. He's a must-play, and you know Chris Carson's going to get some looks in the red zone. So go ahead and keep him in your lineup if you have him. Another one, Isaiah Crowell. He's coming off that historic game last week. I fully expect him to not replicate that 200-plus yards rushing, but I think there's a good chance that he can get to that 100-yard mark against a young Indianapolis defense who has Darius Leonard. He's been solid. He's a rookie. However, that interior of the Colts defense isn't where it needs to be. I'll put it to you that way. And another stardom, well, this one comes from one matchup. How about Kareem Hunt versus New England and Sony Michel versus Kansas City. These are two teams that on the defensive side of the ball, they've had their struggles, they've had their headaches, and I expect both teams to really find success on the ground. I know, for instance, the Chiefs, they'll probably be playing without Justin Houston, and I know he's a pass rusher, but he also does play a factor in coming off that edge and stopping the run game outside the tackles. His presence not being there should also bode well for Sony Michel. Now, receivers for you, start them. If you have Odell Beckham Jr. or Sterling Shepard, go ahead and put them in your starting lineup. Philadelphia's secondary, there's been a lot of question marks around there. Ronald Darby hasn't looked good. Jalen Mills is taken a lot of scrutiny and public criticism for his play over the early portion of the season. I know Eli Manning's been a little consistent, hot and cold, so to speak, but I think he's finding his rhythm, throwing the ball down the field. I look for both of those guys to have a pretty big night on Thursday, and what I think should be a relatively high-scoring game. And how about Calvin Ridley versus Tampa? Ridley, he's on that hot streak. He gets another good matchup against the Buccaneers. You have Brent Grimes there, they're probably their best corner right now, but I'm assuming he's going to be taking Julio Jones, so that should open things up for Ridley, as it really has been the last couple weeks. One more for you, and this one's a little sleeper. How about Dede Westbrook from the Jacksonville Jaguars? The Dallas Cowboys, they've struggled against opposing slot receivers. Anthony Brown has been manning the slot, maybe a little bit of Jordan Lewis. We saw what Kiki Kuti did for the Houston Texans. And Westbrook, he was held in check a little bit against Kansas City, but I would not be surprised if he goes off for another one of those 100-plus yard games. Blake Bortles looks his way a lot, and you also have to take into account that Westbrook has game-changing speed. Tight ends for you, Zach Ertz against the New York Giants. He, as I said, as long as he's on that gridiron, you got to plug him in and play him. Jared Cook is my other one. He's going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I understand the Seahawks defense has been really good, but Cook is Derek Carr's favorite target, and he has a rare blend of athleticism and size. Go ahead and give him a play. He should have a heavy workload through the air. Some defenses, Minnesota's Vikings against Arizona and Josh Rosen. The Vikings will be back at home. I understand there's a little concern because Josh Allen, the rookie, went into Minnesota and dominated them. I don't think that'll be the case this time around. I expect them to have a nice performance and get you some valuable points, with some of those players they have on the defense getting after Rosen, who's struggled to stay upright in his first couple starts in the NFL. Now, a couple of sit-ups before we end today's episode. Quarterbacks, Joe Flacco at Tennessee, Marcus Mariota against Baltimore. Same matchup, same result. Keep both of those guys on the bench. Tennessee and Baltimore have really stout defenses. I just think it's a little bit too risky of a play to roll either of those signal callers out there. Running backs, AP against Carolina. He's dealing with the shoulder injury for one, but this Carolina front is very talented. K'Wan Short, they got Julius Peppers on the outside. And guess what? They get Thomas Davis back from suspension to play alongside Luke Kuechly and Shaq Thompson, so not a good idea. The other one would be, be wary about, I won't say sit him, but temper your expectations for Melvin Gordon. He's going up against a very underrated Cleveland front seven. Under Greg Williams, they're playing very well. They'll be at home. Look what they did to Baltimore and Alex Collins. They limited them. They have Myles Garrett there, who obviously is a freak in his own right. That linebacking core of Christian Kirksey, Schobert, and Jamie Collins, they're the real deal. So I wouldn't necessarily sit him, but just be aware that he could have a potential bust performance on Sunday. A couple receivers, Devin Funchess, I was initially high on him at the beginning of the season. It just seems like he's gotten lost in that Carolina offense. Plus, he'll probably draw a matchup with Josh Norman, so stay away from him. And as for some tight ends, Trey Burton, who will be playing the Miami Dolphins, I know he had that one nice outing, still a little bit too inconsistent to really play him unless you're in a deep league. And then the other one is Vance McDonald against Cincinnati. This one's kind of an intriguing one for a lot of people, but don't forget Vontaze Burfict is back in the starting lineup for the Bengals, so they should be able to get a handle on Vance McDonald and what he can do over the middle. Now, the same can't be said for Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown, who I think both of those guys are start-worthy this week. And a couple of defenses to leave on your bench, the Eagles and the Giants defenses. I know it's tempting because both offenses haven't really hit high gear, but leave both of them on the bench. Those are some of the questions I've been getting about, well, maybe I should play Philadelphia's defense or New York's defense. Leave both of them out. Go with another streaming option if you have to in free agency. And that just about does it for this week's episode of Stardom Situm on the Pro Football Chase YouTube channel. I appreciate you checking it out. And I'll be back here next Wednesday for the same result, the same content for week number 7. So I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you then. Have a blessed rest of the evening.